Dear students, today we are going to study in brief about the development of temple architecture under the aegis of Gupta dynasty rulers. While we study this subject, some relevant questions which prop up in our mind are: which was their domain of rule of Gupta rulers? What are the architectural creations which brought acclaim to this dynasty as lovers of art and architecture? What are the characteristics of Gupta style temple architecture? What are the important sites attributed to Gupta style temple architecture? Now, history of Gupta dynasty. Under the Gupta Empire, which arose in Bihar around 320 AD, there was an outpouring of science, literature, music and the visual arts. The empire spread across northern India and lasted over 200 years. It is seen as India's classical age. The great rulers of the Gupta dynasty, Chandragupta I, Samudragupta, Chandragupta II, Kumargupta and Skandagupta dominate the history of India of the 4th and the 5th centuries AD. Consciously emulating the ancient Mauryan Empire, they established their capital at Patliputra, where they grew in power and importance until they, along with the remnants of Kushana culture, were finally crushed by the invasion of the White Huns in the last years of the 5th centuries. Originally from eastern Uttar Pradesh, Chandragupta I extended his rule to Magadh by marrying a Lichavi princess, an event celebrated in a series of gold coins. He was the first of the dynasty to take the title Maharaja Dhiraj, means the Indian great king of great kings or supreme king. His son Samudragupta was a noted conqueror, and his grandson Chandragupta II spread the empire west and southwards with a series of conquests and marriages. The Gupta period is often described as the golden age of art and architecture in India. During this period, the iconographic canons of Brahmanical, Jain and Buddhist divinities were perfected and standardized, which served as ideal models of artistic expression for later centuries, not only in India but also beyond its border. It was an age of all-round perfection in domestic life, administration, literature, as seen in the works of Kalidas, in art creations and in religion and philosophy, as exemplified in the widespread Bhagavata cult, which identified itself with an intensive cult of beauty. Now we are going to discuss the evolution of Gupta style temple architecture. During the Gupta period, a firm foundation of temple architecture was laid when the basic elements of the Indian temple, consisting of a square sanctum and pillared porch, emerged. The evolved Gupta temple also had a covered processional path for circumambulation that formed a part of the worship ritual. Earlier, temples of the period had a flat slab roof, often monolithic, but the later temples in brick and stone developed a shikhara. The gradual evolution of the Gupta style is traceable through development of the plan and the ornamentation on the pillars and door frame, the later introducing new decorative motifs like goblins, couples, flying angels, doorkeepers and a figure relief in the center of the lintel emblematic of the deity consecrated in the temple. Sculptures of deities, their consorts, celestial beings, couples, directional deities, composite animals and decorative motifs form the mass of images that adorn the walls of the temples and their interiors. The deities consecrated in the sanctum were carved strictly according to religious canons and installed by performing a special consecration ceremony. The genius of the Indian sculptor lay in his visualization of the deities' ideal proportions, youthful bodies and benign expressions. Temple sculptures were not necessarily religious. Many drew on secular subject matters and decorative motifs. The scenes of everyday life, consists of military processions, royal court scenes, musicians, dancers, acrobats and amorous couples. Another group of non-religious figures is the Apsaras or Devganas, celestial women, and Vyalas, composite animals. Now we are going to discuss the types of Gupta architecture. Number 1, temple architecture, and number 2, rock-cut temple architecture. Now, temple architecture. Important temples of Gupta style of temple architecture are Temple of Bhitargaon, Parvati temple at Nachna, Vishnu temple at Tigawa, Ladh Khan temple at Aihole, Shiva temple at Bhumara, Dashavatara Vishnu temple at Devgarh. Now we are going to discuss in detail about the temple of Bhitargaon. This temple most probably built in the 5th century AD at Bhitargaon in the Kanpur district lies 20 miles to the south of Kanpur town, Uttar Pradesh. This temple is the earliest and the most remarkable example of brick building and bears resemblance to the Buddhist temple of Bodh Gaya. The temple of Bhitargaon stands at the center of a fairly high plinth. It is a tower-like edifice rising in diminishing stages to a height of 70 feet. The projected porch on the east side is approached by steps. A passage leads to an interior chamber or cella 15 feet square. The outer ornamentation of terracotta sculpture is certainly the most striking feature of the Bhitargaon temple. The walls rise in bold mouldings, their upper portions being decorative with a row of rectangular panels, alternating with ornamental pilasters. Like many Brahmanical structures, it was not a temple for worshippers, but a repository or a shrine for an image. This is the oldest remaining Hindu shrine with a roof and a high shikhara, which there is a series of arches. Now we are going to discuss the Parvati temple at Nachna. The Parvati temple, earlier known as the Shiva temple, built in 5th century AD in the Udayagiri state about 10 miles from Bhumara, Madhya Pradesh. The temple, constructed on a terrace 35 feet wide and is composed to a square sanctum 15 feet wide. The sanctum cella is 8.5 feet in diameter. There is a flight of steps in front of the porch, on each side of which there were discovered the plinths of 2 smaller shrines, measuring 8 feet by 2 feet and 5 feet by 8 feet. This is a west-facing temple, contrary to most other Hindu temples which face east. The sanctum doorway is surrounded by finely carved guardians with Ganga and Yamuna river goddesses. North and south walls are provided with pierced stone windows so that the light can enter the sanctum. Now, the Vishnu temple at Tigawa. The Vishnu temple of Kankali Devi at Tigawa, Madhya Pradesh is the typical example of a temple which retains Gupta features in spite of later additions to its frontage. The temple has a sanctum and an open portico supported on 4 pillars. The Tigawa temple is a square structure of 22.5 feet square, and its side encloses a cella of 8 feet diameter. It has porch projections in front to the extent of 7 feet. The facade owes its character entirely to the design of its pillars. The pillars form the main elements of its frontage, and each consists of massive abacus surrounded by a device of loins, a capital resembling a broad conventional vase, a short shaft of many sides and a plain square pedestal. The pillar is a descendant of the Vishnu column at Besnagar of 5 centuries earlier, and the loin motif is of Ashoka's monoliths. The Tigawa temple's doorway to the cella with Yakshini motif reminds of the Buddhist Purana, but is transmuted in the Gupta temple to suit Brahmanical text. In the earlier compositions, a dryad embraces a tree, but here it has become an allegory of the holy waters of Jamuna and Ganga, with the river goddess standing on a tortoise on one side, symbolizing the Jamuna, and a similar figure standing on a crocodile or a makara on the other, representing the Ganges. The image of Narsimha is placed inside the sanctum. The portico has an image of the Tigawa Vishnu, another one of Chamunda Kankali Devi. Now, Ladh Khan temple at Aihole. This temple, built in 5th century AD at Aihole in the Bijapur district of Bombay Presidency in the state of Karnataka in the early Chalukyan times. It is dedicated to Shiva and is located to the south of the Durga temple. The temple consists of a shrine, Garbhagriha, with mandapa in front of it. It is a rectangular building with a flat roof of stone slabs. There are stone grills on two sides to admit light. The eastern end opens in a pillared porch. The wall is in reality a Parsi style of massive stone posts, between which the latticed slabs have been placed like screens. The main shrine houses a Shiva ling with a Nandi and outer walls having many carved images along with floral motifs. The Mukh Mandapa, situated in front of the sanctum, consists of a set of 12 carved pillars. Ladh Khan temple is the earliest example of the massive bracket-like capital continued throughout the Hindu Renaissance period. Now we are going to discuss the Shiva temple at Bhumara. It resembles in type and plan to the Bhitargaon temple at Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. The Shiva temple at Bhumara, built in late 5th century AD, about 6 miles from Uchchera railway station on Jabalpur-Itarsi section. This shrine consists of a square masonry cella, Garbhagriha, of about 35 feet with a flat slab roof and carved doorway having representations of river goddesses on the jumps and a fine bust of Shiva with flying figures on the lintel. The cella contained a Shiva lingam of the type of the still finer examples existing at Kho in the same state. Around the Garbhagriha are the scattered remains of a larger chamber which surrounded it, providing a roofed Pradakshina path and of a mandapam attached to and preceding this enclosure. These remains consist of a great variety of columns which are not monolithic, of richly carved lintels that supported the roofing slabs of Chaitya window niches from the cornice. Some of the Gana figures have Rakshasa faces on their bellies. Now we are going to discuss the Dashavatara temple at Deogarh. The early Gupta style reached its culmination by early 6th century, and one of the surviving gems of Hindu architecture of the Gupta period is the Shiva temple at Deogarh in Jhansi district. The most common feature of the temple is shikhara instead of a conventional flat roof. Unfortunately, as the upper part of the sanctum is ruined, the details of its shape are difficult to make out, but it must not have been less than 40 feet in height. The Dashavatara temple at Deogarh is 18 feet square and it is placed in the center of a square terrace, 5 feet high, with a flight of steps in the middle of each side. Another most important feature of this temple is the arrangement of its portico. In the center of the over door slab is a plaque of Vishnu on the great Nag. To the right and the left At the top and outside the main zone of the frame are reliefs of the river goddess Ganga and Jamuna. Dwarpalas or door guardians and female divinities are carved on the overlapping frames of the door. Now we are going to discuss the rock-cut temple architecture. The cave architecture also attained a great degree of refinement during the Gupta period. The Chaitya and Vihara caves at Ajanta and the Ellora caves are the best specimens of cave architecture of the period. Important sites of rock-cut temples of Gupta period. Number 1. Ajanta caves. The cave temples of Ajanta are situated about 62 miles north of Aurangabad district, Maharashtra. The 30 temples at Ajanta are set into a rocky sides of a crescent-shaped gorge in the Inhydri hills of the Sahyadri ranges. There are two cave designs at Ajanta called Chaityagrihas and Viharas. Chaityagrihas were hall of worship, large rectangular chambers separated by rows of pillars into a central nave, surrounded by easels on three sides for circumambulation during prayer, with a sanctuary opposite the entrance. Viharas or monasteries were rectangular in shape halls with a series of small cells attached on both sides. Ellora caves. The contemporary viharas or monasteries at Ellora are the fine examples of Buddhist rock-cut architecture and are in direct line with Ajanta. The Ellora halls are excavated out of a ridge of low hills pushed up from the vast plateau of the Deccan. The Buddhists created 12 rock-cut halls for their creed at Ellora. This series is divided into two subgroups. Cave numbers 1 to 5 are known as Dedwada group. Each subgroup has a prayer hall and is attached monasteries. The later group of monasteries, numbers 6 to 12, are notable for their size and extent. Udayagiri caves. The Udayagiri caves are an early Hindu ritual site located near Vidisha in the state of Madhya Pradesh, northern India. They were extensively carved and reworked under the command of Chandragupta II, emperor of the Gupta Empire, in the late 4th and 5th centuries AD. The most famous sculpture in the monumental figure of Vishnu in his incarnation as the boar-headed Varaha. In conclusion, we can say that through this brief yet informative lesson, we have been able to comprehend the basic elements of architectural value under the Gupta dynasty, which have enlightened us that it truly represents a plethora of valuable and magnificent examples of fabulous architectural structures which denote that it was a golden era in real sense of the word in terms of capturing the cultural spirit of art, culture and religion. Thank you.